Welcome to the Mystical Musings with Friends podcast. Join us in these fun, consciousness-expanding episodes hosted by myself, Kimberley Leite, where we discuss the world of the mystical and how this world can enhance your life experience, along with spiritual teachers and leaders from around the world. Join us as we explore subjects including the ascension and oneness teachings, law of attraction, channeling, spiritual healing, psychic explorations, and various other journeys within the mystical, esoteric, and metaphysical realms. It is a journey behind the veil of our reality, and it's a journey of awakening to the powerful being that you truly are. Hello everybody, and welcome to our next episode of Mystical Musings with Friends. So today I am joined by a good friend, Jenni Hughes, who is a medium. So today we're going to talk about mediumship, how that relates to channeling and all the other mystical elements that you can tap into with mediumship. So thank you for joining, Jenni.
Hi, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being our guest here. So Jenni, tell us a little bit about yourself and your mediumship journey.
All right. Well, I'm Jenni. I do spirit spectra guidance, and that's basically like ascension guidance and mediumship. I do tarot as well. And that started, I guess I've been doing it my whole life. And I think I started actively contacting the dead when I was about 14 or 15. But we were using like Ouija boards and things like that, just kids like, messing with stuff we didn't understand, and had a lot of interesting things happen and got a lot of interesting information. But like it just never clicked for me until I was much older, and about 3 years ago or so, when I started doing like my meditation, my spiritual practice, was when I really kind of caught on and started doing it in a more, real way.
Yeah, that's really cool because, as you know, I'm a channel. I mean, I've had some experience with, the other side, I guess you call it. But I felt the energies. And for me, I don't know if it's the same with you, Jenni, but I feel like it's quite different as well. But I can see like the value in mediumship because, obviously channeling, when you channel, like for me, when I channel, I mean, we call it higher beings, but not really higher. They're just in a high frequency, and they're actually aspects of us. And that usually comes through teachings, but I find very fascinating and very helpful for a lot of people is that, by tapping into, people who have transitioned the earth is very valuable, especially, the family members that, has been left behind. A lot of people have maybe unanswered questions or grief. So in your experience, Jenni, how has that been and how has that helped a lot of people in that?
I mean, for me, I find that it's really helpful. It is helpful with the grief. It is helpful with that mourning period for people. To understand, especially if, their loved one had a passing that was very, like a surprise or, they were harmed in some way, if it was like an accident or something like that, people really struggle with the fact that their loved ones suffered. And so for me, it's always different. They will come through and give whatever information it is that is helpful for their loved ones or for whoever it is that wants that information. And it's not just information about that. Like they also give them helpful information about like their soul contracts in this life and what that purpose of it was. So it helps them with the learning that is related to the passing of that person as well.
Yeah, and I think that's very valuable information because
if it's someone that you know, I can assume that people probably like not just believe it more, but have more of that connection, you know, because it's more personal to them. Whereas if I guess, you know, channeling, you know, an angel, for instance, you know, it's all well and good, but depending on someone's belief system, perhaps they may not take it 100%, or maybe they don't feel like they have that personal connection or something like that. So I can see the value in mediumship with that, because they have that personal connection with the person on the other side.
I give information. Sometimes it's very different. It's interesting because sometimes the entity will want to let them know who they are, or sometimes I'll get like somebody that comes through and they're very personal, but like they won't tell me their name or they won't show me their whole face, but that's all part of the way that I can describe them to the other person or the client, is, you know, this person's very guarded, they're, you know, very quiet, very personal, and that sometimes helps them to realize, you know, who that person is as well. And I can give personal information sometimes as well. Like I can give, you know, I've had people ask me what kind of tattoo did this person have, or things like that, where like I can actually give them that information, and that helps to kind of, you know, bond it.
Yeah.
So they have a changed belief.
Yeah, and you know, and it's a very, very powerful gift that you have to do mediumship. I mean, like for instance, all my life I've had certain abilities. You know, I started seeing angels. When was I? I was around 6. Yeah, I was probably around 16 or 17 years old. Obviously, it's not what it is now, but I remember I could feel their love, you know, their energy and so forth. And there are certain events during my life where I've been in contact with, you know, what we call spirits on the other side. I guess because I was always sensitive to it, and I guess a lot of people that are watching this are also very sensitive. So my guess is that many of you watching or listening to this have had such experiences with such spirits, and it's you know, it's very interesting. Actually, I can attribute my channeling actually to, I guess, contacting spirits, you know, because even though I had all these abilities, when was it, about 4 years ago now, I've always had some contact with the other side, you know, but it's more, like I said, like angels and ascended masters, things like that. And then I actually had a good friend of mine, and this is how, like, my journey, for instance, this next level of expansion that, you know, I'm exploring now. And she's a medium, and she actually said to me, I've got a message for you. And she said, go on the beat, like go and open your, you know, a journal and just write anything that comes through. I'm like, okay, you know, like, it's like, okay, I'll get to that later. And I didn't really, like, oh, that's really cool, but I didn't, like, okay, yeah, I'll get to it. Anyway, and then I went to help my dad. My dad has a B&B, and he wanted me to help look after the place, right? And then I've been there before, I've stayed there before. I didn't really sense there was anything there, but since that time I stayed there, I also became more, I guess, energetically sensitive, because I did a Reiki kind of training. And anyway, so I stayed there, and I remember it was the night before they left, so I was going to be there by myself looking after this circa 1830 place. I don't know, more than like 8 rooms. Anyway, and it was like I was trying to sleep, and then I was lying there, and these energies were there. Like it felt like it was there floating around. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because it doesn't feel like an angel, because I guess you feel like overwhelming love, and it's a very different energy. I don't know, maybe because I'm very sensitive, I can feel the difference. And I'm there, and I'm like, this is, and it was kind of keeping me awake. I was like, oh, and then I heard this voice saying, oh, I think it was a shaman wants to talk to you. And but it was like someone wanted to introduce me to someone. I'm like, oh, okay. I was like,
right, you're like, oh, there's several.
Is that right? And I was like, okay, but I kind of disregarded it, because I'm like, I have to start work, and it's like I need to sleep. And I'm like, thank you. Hi, I'll talk to you another time. I need to sleep. So I'm lying there, and
that too, where it's like they want to talk, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm living my life right now, so we'll talk about you.
and I guess because it's different, because I guess with, like, if you experience the, angels and things like that, it kind of does put you to sleep. It might keep you awake, but you kind of feel really at peace and loving, and then you can just drift off. But this one, it's like I don't know, no experience, like a different energy, and you're kind of like, okay, but I need to sleep, lying there.
It's all different energies. Honestly, I feel like the spirit energies are almost a little bit lower vibrational. Like it's not as heavy and intense and like loving. It's very much, you can feel the energy of the person. The same, I feel like, as you would if they were standing next to you alive. To me, it feels very similar. But I have access to both. Like I do have access to like, you know, ET entities and angels and things like that. So it's definitely a different feel.
I know. And I remember lying there and the room was just full of light, like light. And I literally could not, it's like I couldn't sleep because it was like, you know, even like those of you, you know, you have experiences, and those of you who have psychic abilities watching this, you will know that you lie there and it's like you're trying to sleep in darkness, but you can't because your third eye sees everything. So you're lying there and I'm still seeing the room, even my eyes are shut. I'm seeing all the lights and all this action is like, I'm like, okay. I'm like, let me sleep. And I had to put all the lights on just so I could have a constant light. Because when you're trying to sleep and you got light in front of your eyes, it's very like shock. I don't know, just it's kind of a shock, you know, and you can't really sleep. This was like, I really want to get my attention. So I'm like, okay. And then I remember at breakfast the next day, I go to my dad, what are your experiences in this place? And he's like, oh, no, really. And then my stepmom, Laura, she's like, oh, yeah. By the way, if you hear any knocks on your door, don't answer it. I'm like, oh, nice.
Thanks for letting me know.
Thanks for letting me know. I'm like, it's a really old place, you know. And I'm going to the whole place to myself by myself, like, okay. And,
no. My brother,
like I'm not obviously I'm not scared. I'm not like, I don't see it as any fear-based stuff. It's just different energy because I wasn't used to actually communicating in that way. I mean, I've had experiences like when was this? I don't know, 15 years ago as well. I worked in a place that was, I guess, what we call haunted. But you know, obviously there's different explanations, like, you know, portals to other dimensions and that kind of thing. But I remember I used to, like, back then I was a beauty therapist, you know, used to do massage, and you know, that's how I discovered I couldn't actually do Reiki, actually. And then I remember doing, you know, with clients, and then I would see this like kind of shadow move across the wall and all these kind of things. I remember once I was in a treatment room and I heard like, oh, like my name being called and all this kind of weird stuff. I'm like, okay. And at one time it kind of freaked me out a bit, I have to say, but this is before I knew about, you know, channeling, and this is before all these kind of high understandings that I know now. And I remember I was all by myself in a treatment room, and as I was turning around, there was a stool upside down on the treatment bed, and it literally flipped, and went boom, and it had what's it called? Because it had wheels on it, so it didn't even like fall over. It literally, I saw it. It was upside down. It was literally, I saw kind of lift, and literally just went bam, and I'm like, okay.
Like, right, that's enough.
Lucky I haven't had many, like I've had experiences here and there, but anyway, my dad's also kind of like, okay, that's nice. And then during my stay there, it was fine. Like, yes, this shaman was around me, and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, okay, what would you like to say? You know, because I knew they were there, because I see like a purple glow, and it could be boiling hot, and I feel like shivers, you know, down my.
Right, you get the cold.
For me, I feel them differently to others, you know, like you know, ETs and angels. I feel like their energy differently, not just in, like, I guess the emotional reaction, or, I don't know, but also like the temperature.
Emotion evolved in mediumship for sure. Like, I feel like that's part of the communication is the actual like emotion of it. Yeah, it was very, I wasn't expecting it actually to be so period of, I was there for 1 week. Was it 1 week or 2 weeks? No, I think it was 1 week. And so like every day I'm like, you know, helping, I'm doing everything, checking guests in, and, you know, doing all the like cleaning, you know, of the rooms and stuff. And I remember there, and they're like, she's there and her energy's there, and I could feel, she'd be like, oh, hi, how are you going today? And it's like, let's have it, you know. So I was, you know, but like she was always there, and I could feel like this energy all of a sudden. And then interestingly, when I left, about a week after, my dad goes, oh, what was the name? Because I told them what happened, like when they came back. I said, oh, do you remember when you had contact with our spirit, do you remember the name? Like, what was the name? And I said, oh, it was Charmaine. Oh, that's interesting, because he had a guess after I left.
And the guest was like, he helps spirits move on, you know, and he had an experience where, you know, his pillow was moving and this kind of thing, and then sent a spirit and like, oh, is there a spirit here? What's your name? And my dad goes, it was Charmaine. I'm like, whoa! And that kind of and that actually anchored for me the belief that I can like channel. So because
you were like, okay, that was what I
got like a proof, and it was a total stranger. It was the same name, and apparently because it used to be like a nun kind of convent there, like many years ago, and someone died there. And then and it was interesting because when I was cleaning the rooms, I remember I had some like salsa music on, you know, and I was dancing, and I knew she was there, and I'm like, come on, let's have a dance, like, you know, like just mucking around, you know. This, you know, spirit that's right here following me around the house all week. And then what's interesting with this guy, he was like, are you ready to move on? And she said yes. And you know what she did? She turned to a woman, to a kind of old lady, like her periods, and then she danced. Then she actually danced. I'm like, oh my God, because that's what I did with her. Like I was dancing. I'm like, oh my God. So it's kind of like the connection, and then the fact that this stranger that was there, it validated to me that I can actually communicate with non-physical. So this was an extra validation for me. Like I know I could connect in different ways. I know they've been able to communicate with me in different ways during my life, but not in this validation that, wow, I actually got even the name right. Like, wow. So from that basic, that's where my whole journey started to really channel and everything. So yeah, it's amazing.
I think for me, when it actually like anchored it in for me, where I was like, okay, I can trust this, and I can trust the information that's coming through, and I'm not crazy, like, because that's, you know, that's a rung on the ladder as well. We're like, am I just like losing my mind right now? I actually, I met a girl who I'm very good friends with now, but at first we just worked together. We were new work colleagues. And she had a sister that passed, and she asked me for a reading. And from what I had heard, like the very, very brief bit about it, like I just thought that maybe it was like an overdose or something like this. I didn't know what happened. And when she came through, she was so exuberant, and she was so happy and like proud of the way that she lived. Like she was like, I did my job. Like this was the role I was supposed to play, and I did an amazing job. But my sister is struggling, and she needs to see this. So what she did was she showed me her death. Like she showed me the whole thing, and she showed me that she was standing watching it. That was the perspective that I got. And the reason was that she needed her sister to understand that she didn't suffer, and that it wasn't extremely painful for her, and that it wasn't what she thought it was. And for me to be able to tell her exactly how this death process happened, and it was like a completely different situation than I thought it was. Like it was a car accident. But for me to be able to actually tell her exactly what happened, and have her validate that for me even, really kind of anchored it in that, like, I am getting the right information that I need to be giving to people, and that it's important to be giving that to them.
Wow. And what about her? She must have had a, you know, like, I guess this is common, I would assume, that it would have like an emotional reaction from getting that reaction from a loved one.
Absolutely. Definitely very emotional, but I've not ever had anybody react poorly to it at all. Everybody is very, very grateful for the information. Like they know that that's who I'm speaking with. They know that that information is meant for them, and it's meant for their soul, and it's meant for them a lot of the time for them to kind of step into their own awakening. And it helps, you know, to have that realization that, you know, non-physical is still available to us if we, you know, if we practice that.
That's amazing. And it just reminds me actually of something that happened when me and my husband got married. Actually, we had like a kind of a not a dress rehearsal, but just like going through the steps with our celebrant. And you know, my husband, his father actually transitioned, you know, prior to that. but I got to meet him, like, but during that time that we were together, they came, actually, because they're from Brazil, so they came over to Australia, and I did get to spend a week with him and his mum, and then it was like a year or two later, that's when he transitioned quite suddenly. And so obviously when it comes to like readings and events like this, you want your family there. And it's interesting, we went from there, we went to like just a bar, and we decided to just have a drink, because we're there with another friend who was playing the role as a translator for his mum and other family that can't speak English. And I was sitting there, and I received a message, and I don't know about you, Jenni, with how spirits communicate with us in many different ways. And I know that his dad was a big fan of the Beatles, right? And then so I went into this restaurant, and of course there's a lot of emotions. And my husband, he's really happy, but at the same time he's feeling, because his dad's not here for this special event, obviously. And all of a sudden I hear a Beatles song playing, right? And then and then I had this knowing, I think it was Hey Jude, I think it was his favorite song as well. And then I literally received a knowing in that moment that this was a sign from his dad that he's still there.
I get that as well.
And I was like, oh, so touching.
Just knowing, like, okay, that's what this is. Like, sometimes I have the opportunity to just kind of give people messages, like I'll get it and I'll be like, look, I've got a message for you. If you are interested in hearing it, I'll give it to you. And if you are not, then we don't have to go there. But it does come through like that a lot. I get music a lot. Even just from my own guides, I get song lyrics. Like I'll wake up with song lyrics, or I'll hear something when I'm out, and it'll get, like one line from the song that's like stuck over and over and over.
Yeah.
Until I take notice, I'm like, okay, I got it.
No, it's like it, because it's like, for what the beings of light tell me, it's like they come through messages that's aligned to their belief system. So if you have a belief system where you don't believe there are spirits on the other side that can communicate up with us, maybe in a overt way, or in words, maybe they'll just, like you said, play a song, or there'll be something maybe on even the TV. It could be like an ad on TV, but it's something there that links.
Yeah, or Facebook feed, like
things something
that they need to.
And in your experience, like especially with clients or your own personal experience, what are some of the ways that spirits have maybe tried to connect with their loved ones?
I like to tell people a lot of the time. I mean, they will move things. I mean, energy is energy is energy. So, things will get moved. Like, this is actually kind of funny. When I first moved here, so my mom does not like any of this. Freaks her out that her brother passed, and he's actually one of my guides. And so when I came here, I had brought her a book about law of attraction. It's just like a journal workbook thing that she could use to help with stress and things like that. So she put the book in her nightstand, and she came into the room, and the book was on top of the nightstand. And she didn't tell me about it because she didn't want to talk about it. Until a few weeks later, she was like, I don't want to tell you, but like this happened. And I think it happened twice. And then she put it inside the nightstand and put something on top of it. And then she gave me the book back. So like that, sometimes things will move, or I can see like the difference in the particles in the air, you know what I mean? If there's an energy in the vicinity or not. But a lot of the time for other people that aren't so used to seeing those things, or, hearing in a clairaudient sort of way, they will send a bird. They will send, because birds, are have access to both sides of the veil. So I have actually had really interesting situations with birds. I had one with my ex-husband where he was having lunch, and I was just chatting with him about something about the kids, and he was saying, I had given him a message that I had gotten from one of his relatives that had passed. And he was talking to me and he was like, I have to go. I'm going to take a picture and send it to you. And he sent me a picture. He was eating lunch in front of this glass window, and these 3 turkey vultures came up to, like, right up to him, up to the glass, and were like staring at him. And I had told him, I was like, they will send you a bird if they can't get your attention. And he's got my attention so that I can get your attention. But if you see a bird, let me know. So he sent me this picture. And I was like, that's really funny. He's making a joke. It was the appearance of the birds. You know, he made a joke, and which was very, very common for that relative. And then after I gave him the information, he was like, okay. He went back the next day, and one of those birds showed up again while he was at lunch, and it walked up with its wings out.
Oh, wow.
Like it was trying to hug him.
And that's amazing.
But like I have seen a parrot right up in my face inside the line of the DMV. I've walked out of my apartment and had a hummingbird like right in my face, just like hang out there for a second. And anytime I get anything like that, you know, I know that there's a message. And so I always tell my clients, you know, if somebody wants to give you a message and you're not exactly picking it up, like they'll send you a bird.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. That's actually interesting, actually, because where I am, I have a lot of birds visit, and some of them I feel have a more connection to me than other birds. I mean, you know, a friend, Wendy, actually, I'm going to have her on a guest soon, and she actually communicates with animals. But I mean, I've had connection, but I don't, you know, I can't communicate in that way at the moment. Well, I haven't really tried that much, but it's not, you know, but, you know, sometimes
that, and it doesn't work well for me.
Yeah, I sometimes get a gist of like they're here to have a chat and connect, but not like details or anything like that. But
from animals, but not really anything else.
Yeah, I always get a lot of cockatoos. They come, and sometimes they really connect. They come and they're like, and I start talking to them, and they're like, and it's like it's like I feel there's a connection, like a oneness connection. So I do feel that with the birds. And interesting, actually, the last couple weeks. I don't know if you have them. I believe they're Asian minor birds. They're kind of like brown birds. And there's this, I don't know if it's the same bird or just the same type, but like our balcony is only open like this much. And there's been 3 times over the last week where it's come inside, this one bird. So that's very interesting. I'm like, that is interesting. I'm like, there's a reason for this, but I don't know actually why. But I'm like, and the bird, and it's interesting. Like I was upstairs and I hear, and the bird was just sitting like on a bowl. I don't know. I think that at first time it had bread, but it was covered. It was sitting there, and as soon as I'm like, it's okay. And like I always try to talk, and then it literally just, as soon as I saw it, it kind of didn't freak out. It just went calmly back outside. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then another time it happened, and it happened another 2 times. And and the last time it happened just a few days ago, the door was literally like this open, like it was, I don't know how a bird got through it. It's my squeeze through. And again, I'm like, I hear something. And it was empty. I have a bowl and it was like completely empty. But the bird, I saw it, it was like sitting in the bowl. I don't know if it's attracted something about that bowl to the bird. I don't know. But it was sitting there. And again, it saw me. And again, it saw me. And I'm like, oh, and it just popped out and went back. Like, didn't freak out. I'm like, it's interesting. The same type of bird has come into, you know, and it wasn't like, you know, you get pigeons and stuff. It wasn't a pigeon. It was this particular bird. I'm like, that's very interesting. So I actually have to bring that with Wendy when I have her on. But yeah, so it's interesting how, you know, they communicate in so many different ways. And you know, throughout my life, you know, I do know like music, for instance. Sometimes I hear music or I see, you know, a TV show, and there's a kind of like a message, like a theme. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this theme's been brought up again for a reason. All right. So you do get the signs. And, you know, I guess because of me, because I do channel, my belief systems, I'm open to a lot of things, and I do receive messages that way. But I guess if you're not in the present moment, or I think maybe I just like to mix it up, to be honest. You know,
probably
it comes through in messages in different ways. Yeah.
Something different.
Something different.
For sure. Someone's trying to get your attention.
No, yeah, but it's it is interesting. And what's your take as well, like with spirits on the other side? Like I know with the beings of the light, they basically just say, you know, you know, when we transition, we go to non-physical, but we're living, you know, multi-dimensional lives at once. There's no like what we call as heaven or hell. Like I know, like depending on your religion, I know that people are attached to that, but it's not what we think. And they're always there. And the beings of light say that you always connected to them as well. So even if they've transitioned, you're always connected. And so what's your take about all this, and you know, what actually, like, have they shown you like what happens when they transition? Have they given you those kind of details at all?
Yeah, so in my understanding, and I've actually I've discussed this only with like one other person, so this is fresh information. From my understanding and what I have been shown, because I do also do work with those spirits that have transitioned. So I have had times where somebody has transitioned in a way that's very violent or very, very sudden. And what that does is that kind of like shocks that spirit. And sometimes they will stay in this realm because they are, because of resistance, basically. And they kind of get stuck in this purgatory realm. And so higher vibrational transition into teachers, or they go directly into like a rest period. So it's like a rest and review, basically to see kind of what they accomplished in this lifetime, if they accomplished their mission that they came here for, if they learned the lessons that they came here to learn, and what they want to do to prepare for their next incarnation. Lower vibrational, so lower vibrational humans or lower vibrational spirits that have passed in a way that is very sudden or very violent come through very differently, and they will get stuck. And so the purpose of that, I feel, is sometimes they will stay in order to help the mourning process of their loved ones. Sometimes they will stay because they are just kind of stuck here, and they're reaching for these energies. So they're basically here to help with the process. So those are going to be your lower vibrational energies and thought patterns that are like attachments for our learning, and to help us push past beliefs having to do with those things. And so that is kind of the whole purpose of that. But when people pass in a way that keeps them kind of stuck, it's really interesting to attach, not to attach to, but to connect to. It comes through very staticky, almost, I've had it come through as like screaming, and just like trauma. And so, what I can do is, in a meditative state, I can go in and call on angels that help with that, like Archangel Michael, especially. You can call on people to help with that, and then there is a process that I walk through with them, where I will like face them and ask them if they're ready to move forward, if they're ready to go into their review. You can clear things up that they've been confused about. Okay, so you passed, this happened, are you ready to move forward? Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. If I take a lot of time in between, I can come back, and sometimes they'll be ready. But it does help them to kind of move out of this realm into the next. And I think that that's also really important to do. People pass and they're very afraid. They don't know where they're going. They don't know what's going to happen. It helps for them to be able to move on, because that lowers those kind of staticky energies that are here with us too.
So it's basically that is people who are in a lot of fear, is that right? And, or like you said, their death was traumatic, so maybe they haven't come to terms with how they exited, something like that.
It's like resistance. It's like they don't understand. They're very afraid. They don't know where they're going. They don't know where they are. They can't contact their loved ones because they're here. So it's very frightening and for them. So it's helpful to be able to go in and like let them know, like, this is happening. You're okay. there's like a whole process of like walking them from one realm into the next.
Right. Yeah, because I do know that when spirits do transition, so I don't know like the details, the fine print, but I do know that a lot of the fear when people transition, that kind of goes away. So are you saying that like just everyday kind of fears that we have? So is that like an automatic thing, or like you said, there's that part of, there's a period where they have to kind of address it and then it falls away, or is part of it instant, or?
It depends. It really, I think, depends on the person. So sometimes people are just very, very, very fearful. Even if they're expecting their death, they're just very fearful. And I feel like a lot of that is also locked up around like their religions, kind of the way that they've been raised,
Yes.
to think that there's heaven or hell. They're very concerned about their actions during their life. You know, they are really kind of reviewing their life, and that I think can also cause some fear as well. Otherwise, you know, I think sometimes people get visitations as well before they pass, and so that can help to ease that right before they pass. I'm actually was just given some information about doing that kind of work in the future, where I would work with people that are kind of very like pre-transition, like getting ready to pass, and helping them to understand what that process looks like, and that it's not a scary process, that they are still them, they are still very much that energy, they are just moving into the next phase. So in the future, that might be kind of, that might be something that I offer. I'm still kind of working out the, you know, details of it.
I can understand how that'll be very comforting for people who, you know, are fearful of that, especially, you know, people with, you know, terminal diagnosis and things like that, that they because of the, you know, the unknown, a lot of people, even if people are, you know, religious or spiritual, I'm sure like when you get, I don't know, like I'm assuming, I don't know if it's real, but like when people are faced with that mortality, I guess, when I think that their life is transitioning, I'm sure it's normal, like it's a rational fear, that a shock that, okay, what's going to happen when I die, you know? So even if you are tapping into belief systems, there still might be a little bit of a doubt, you know? So I can't stand a service like that. Yeah.
About their loved ones.
Loved ones as well. Yeah.
So that's another thing that I'm working on. I have, I don't find it, I don't have fears around dealing with any of that stuff. And so for me, I think it's going to be a process of learning how to like be more relatable about it with people that are going through that.
No,
I have had a couple of experiences so far where I have been with a body that has already transitioned, and I've been with somebody, you know, near them when they're about to transition, but I haven't actually been there like for that actual process. So we'll see where that goes, but I would love to be able to help people in that way. I think that it would be for people.
And I could see how that would be very rewarding as well, that you're actually helping, you know, that process, not just with that person transitioning, but the family as well. Because, you know, even though if they transition and they're like all their fear drops away and, you know, everything is, and I can see that everything was perfect, their life is perfect and so forth, the people that are left behind are often the ones that do suffer because they don't understand the high perspective, even though that being is all, you know, is in a good place and everything like that. It's just the family doesn't know how to deal with it. So I can see that.
And it's one thing to, you know, we miss our loved ones. We miss them when they pass, but it's another thing to think that they could be suffering, or that they could be, you know, they could be scared or whatever, like, you know, or they could be, a lot of it is that they could be suffering, and sometimes that they are suffering beforehand, but there is purpose to that. And I think that it's important for people to understand that, like, we all come here to have specific experiences, and if part of that is suffering before we transition, for some reason, then it is what it is, and that doesn't have anything to do with us. And the best way to go about it is to just be very accepting of it as their journey.
Yeah, and I know like the beings of the light, they say that the way people transition, it's due to their soul contracts. So, and they say that, you know, pre-birth, we actually plan like how we're going to exit. Of course, soul contracts are not always set in stone, but we wanted to explore life in a certain way. And that also includes the way we exit or transition this earth. So when
that has a lot to do too with when people, you know, have an accident or they pass and they come back, because it's not their time. If it was their time, they would not come back.
Yeah.
You know?
And,
so,
you know, and it also too with people who are, it's hard to come to terms, like especially with you know, people have transitioned on a large scale, like what we're seeing now with the COVID-19, or if it's a terrorist attack or anything like that, when there's a lot of people that do transition, people go, oh, why did they have to suffer? Why did we have to suffer in this way? But from what they've told me is that they're actually playing, especially when it's like, you know, a grand scale kind of thing. It's, you know, they're also playing a role for the family that's left behind, and they're also playing a role also for the collective, especially if it has like a worldwide attention, you know, kind of event. And it goes, so it's done in a way that even though people may be left behind, like suffer, there is a higher reason behind that. We may not be able to understand it from a human perception, but there's always a higher reason. There's always a higher reason why people choose to live that way. And of course, people have had, you know, accidents, or they've transitioned in, like, say, a violent way. Like, why did it have to happen? But even though it seems very, like, obviously from a human perception, very tragic, they actually pre-birth wanted to exit that way because for a higher reason.
It's either that because they needed that experience for their higher learning, or because somebody in their life, they did that. They came here to have that experience so that somebody close to them in their life can learn from it as well. You know, children or parents or close friends or all of the people around them. There are definitely times when it is, you know, meant for multiple people, and can also be part of like us watching how that person handles their transition. Are they fearful? Do they become angry? Do they become more calm? How they react to that and how they deal with it. Do they take care of themselves? Do they let it go? That is all lessons for the people around them as well.
But, you know, it's very comforting to know that, you know, we are internal, and that even though we transition, it's not the end. And of course, you know, the beings of light talk about we have multidimensional lives. It's not like, okay, this life is finished and then you're non-physical forever, like, or you're just non-physical. No, like, even if you're non-physical, yeah, you are living many different lives. Yeah, you're living multiple lives at once. So even if you transition, you're still living a physical life. And I guess in our human comprehension is like, okay, they're non-physical and that's it. They're just non-physical, but, you know, for a period of time. But because we are attached to linear time as well, so what we think is forever is not forever. And like not even a blink in an eye, they're experiencing life somewhere else. And they could have even, you know, come back onto the earth plane like this, even though it might seem in a human time frame, it's like maybe, you know, so many years or whatever. Is that from your experience? Like, because of our concepts of time, like we might think it's like a large period of transition, but that's in our human comprehension. Yeah.
A lot of review time, which could be years and years and years and years to us, because we do use linear time, but to them, you know, what's 25 years?
Yeah.
Eternal. So, you know, but I have actually had a couple of experiences with clients where they have had a parent that comes and there is some essence of that parent or friend or loved one that has passed that it shows up in a pet a lot of the time. Wow. And where it puts them close to you, and they help you with your mourning in a way that doesn't feel spooky to people. That is kind of a way that they'll go about it.
That's wonderful. And it's very comforting to the family, especially those who like can, you know, feel the love, especially because of pets. You know, pets are unconditional love, so you can feel the love. You know.
Family, but there are people that have, you know, when you have a pet and you have that, you know, special connection with that specific pet, like you know that it's something special.
Mm. And also when we transition, I mean, I hear a lot about when people go through transition, they are being greeted by, could be family members or angels, whether it's part of the actual transition process or actually when they cross over. Do you have any experience with that, about transition
I
phase?
don't have a lot of experience with that. Like, they don't ever really show me kind of who is with them when they're greeted, but I have done some kind of soul work for like when my grandfather passed recently. His wife had passed a few years previously. When I went in and, you know, kind of helped him walk through, she was there waiting with him. Like, she was there and they held hands and she walked him through with her, like they went together, because that was the way that they wanted it to be. And so, you know, I just kind of went with it and I was like, all right, everybody goes together.
Actually, that actually reminds me what happened when my grandmother transitioned. And I had this vision, it was actually at the funeral, and I had this vision of, so that was, when, like, so my grandfather passed first, both from dementia, and then my grandmother followed a few years later. And I saw this vision, it was like this beautiful kind of yellow, golden, white light. And I saw my grandmother and grandfather walking through the light, like, so their back was shown to me, and they were walking into the light, hand in hand. And I was like,
that is what it looks like when they pass from the purgatory realms into their review area. It's just it's very
wow.
bright, white, yellow, white light, and they kind of walk into that.
That's wonderful, because I'm not, obviously, I'm not like a medium. I mean, like, when I'm in areas where, I don't know in your definition how you would explain it, but where there's like a spirit that kind of lingers in that kind of place, where there is a dimensional portal to that space, or attachments and so forth. Like, when I'm in an area where there's a spirit, I usually can see and sense that, but they don't kind of like come to me in that kind of way. But yeah, this was amazing when I saw this at the funeral. It was like just so beautiful that I saw because they were always sweet, you know, and they were always holding hands, and they were holding hands together, walking into life, like, oh, so beautiful. And I did share that with my family.
They were showing you where they were going. I think that's so sweet.
Yeah. So I'd like, so it shows that, you know, everyone, I guess, has this ability, you know, to tap into this realm. So you know, we have so many spirit guides, whether they're, you know, in human form, whether they're like higher frequency, there's so many people there assisting us. So
absolutely, and everybody is assisting us so that we can expand and grow and learn, and that's what this is all about. And, you know, it's not scary at all. I think people sometimes think it's a little spooky, don't want to hear from their loved ones, don't really want to be involved with it, but it is very loving, and the whole process it's just for our learning.
Yeah. And have you had this experience as well that I've heard that obviously because we drop some of our fear-based beliefs when you transition during that period. So if we want to contact, you know, a loved one still on earth, perhaps, you know, they're presented differently because maybe their fears were part of, I don't know, like their personality, for instance. Yeah. So would that be a thing where, you know, like a loved one's trying to contact you in the physical world, but it might be like a little bit different because you're so used to maybe that person in fear, and then now no longer in fear. But like, I hear that the personality remains, but is there like a large difference? Like, will that person be able to pick up on that energy because they have shifted in that way?
You know, I mean, I can see the difference, and I'm sure that the clients can feel the difference in the way that the message comes through. I mean, like, there are pieces of information to help them, you know that's who it is. They will give very specific information if they need to. But generally, there are no answers because they aren't here anymore. They're not in pain. They don't have confusion. Yes. They know what life is. They know what the process is that we're going through. They know that they need to give us information in order to help us move forward in some way. So just like that friend that I had told you about before with her sister, very, very, had a very rough situation, you know, with drugs and things like that, had a very hard life. And then when she came through, she was just like raring to go. Just, I'm so excited about what I did, you know, like she was so happy, and she was very, very happy that she could get that message across. And I think a lot of the time that's some of the excitement that's there, where, you know, normally she might not have been so exuberant, but in her passing, she definitely was. Like, she was very excited about what she had done and what she'd accomplished and how she was helping her family.
Oh, that's really special. I can see that, you know, the people like that might feel like left behind, especially if they relate the life experience to how they were living, and they hear that message that they're actually happy and this was just, you know, a role they were playing. It's not really who they are, and if they affected by certain things, it was just a human role. It's not actually who they are, so they can, you know, separate that.
Yeah, and I think for that specific friend, like, she was ready to understand that, and she was ready to hear it. A lot of people aren't ready to hear that. It's just a little too much for them to comprehend, so just yet. But it really is, like, they're happy. They aren't in pain. They aren't suffering. This life, they know that this was temporary, and that this was a simulation, basically, for our learning.
Yeah. And, you know, like, I know the beings will like always say that, you know, with soul contracts, we're here to explore certain things. So, you know, if someone's mourning a loved one or a friend that's, you know, had maybe, like you said, a difficult life, they wanted to experience that. So, you know, a lot of people might feel sad for that person that, oh, they had to have this difficult life, and then now they've transitioned, and like, it's kind of like they might see it as like a bad life or an unwanted life. But in essence, you know, we're all highly advanced. We're all high vibrations. It's just we're playing a specific role in, you know, here on Earth in the illusion of physical reality. So because of that, it might be perceived that they're living an unwanted life, but this journey was perfect for them. So even if, you know, it was something that maybe doesn't fit into what's been seen as a good life in society, doesn't mean it was a good life, and they wanted that experience for a reason. And that it kind of gives you comfort in that way as well, that when, you know, your loved ones do transition, you can, you know, see that, you know, they lived this life for a reason, and who they are is always there, even if they were playing the role of someone in fear, for instance. They were all there assisting in different ways. So it could be triggering you, activating you. I know, like, for instance, with soul families, they might not be there to always be like show love towards you in an overt way. Maybe they're there to trigger you into something, you know. Like, I know that, like, for instance, there's an example in Australia, Rosie Batty, and it was a domestic violence issue, and her young son was murdered by her ex on visitation. Now, of course, it seems very tragic, obviously, in a human perception. But what happened to that after obviously she went through her mourning period, is that she, you know, started a foundation. She was activating for domestic violence. She got Australian of the Year. She is like, you know, it's what I mean. She's addressing things like this because of what happened. Right. She's now empowering other people, you know, and I've seen this with a lot of people who've gone through tragic accidents. That I've seen that they've actually used their tragedy, even for people who have transitioned and the families left behind, or whether it's people who maybe try to take their life and then they didn't actually transition. Now they're now empowered, and you can see that these are examples of how, you know, soul contracts are playing a part here, that perhaps this was supposed to happen because now it's allowed this empowerment process to take effect. And now the people that are so-called left behind or directly experienced by this event is now empowering others.
Right. There was it was a hypnosis session in one of the Dolores Cannon books. I think it was in one of the Convoluted Universe books. And she talks about this, maybe it wasn't that one. It might have been it might have been a different book. But I think it might have been Embraced by the Light, actually. And in that story, she is shown, it was Embraced by the Light. So this woman who had transitioned too early and was shown a lot of things and came back and told her story. But in the story, when she's being shown how not to judge, it is, there's a man who is like a high-powered lawyer, and he walks every day past this homeless man who's, you know, sleeping on the street. And they show her like this homeless man's soul, basically, and she sees what an advanced, like bright, shiny, angelic creature this person really is. You know, the larger part of them is very advanced. This person came here as a part of a soul contract for this lawyer, so that this man would see this person walking by every day, and then he would eventually start using his money and his wealth and abundance to help others. And that was the whole purpose. The whole purpose of this person living this life as a homeless man with very, very little, is actually just here to do that for this other person. I mean, that was their agreement.
And so it crosses over both. So it crosses over for people who are playing Pacific role and they don't transition, and for those who do transition, and even those who transition in a particular way that maybe is, you know, traumatic or violent, or it's a shock to those people around, then that's also a purpose just in the way they left. So it shows you that in all aspects of our human life, there is a higher reason. There's a sole purpose for everything. So it's really good that, and comforting to know that we always have connections. So especially those of you watching or listening to this, I'm sure many of you are sensitive in your own ways. And, you know, the beings of the light always say that practice being in the present moment, because if you're in the present moment, you can actually see all the signs, whether it's, you know, a spirit guide, you know, an angels and a master or ET, so forth, or if it's a loved one trying to contact you. It's non-physical, and they're always there, you know, providing messages, but it's whether we can actually hear it or pick it up, because they're always sending messages, but sometimes we're so distracted, like, you know, living in dimensions of the past and the future, we can't see the signs in front of us.
I tell people all the time, like, spirit whispers, you know, especially at first when you're too busy and you're too stressed out and there's too much anxiety and you're go, you have to calm yourself down and slow down just to be able to hear it properly. But once you do, you know, it's there. You're not going back.
No, that's wonderful. And it is. And then, like, some people are maybe attached to, like, loved ones in a way that they have to come forth in a certain way. So of course, if someone comes forth in maybe a more loving way, you know, maybe, you know, they've grown up with a loved one who is very fear-based, for instance. So they have this attachment, this person's always going to be fear-based. But then if they, you know, try to contact and they're loving and everything's like fear's dropped away, maybe they're also on the reverse, could be even resistant to that because they don't know how to take it, you know, because like all of a sudden, like, I'm getting signs that maybe this person is contacting me, but I don't understand, can't conceptualize in a human way because this person now is very loving and I feel the energy. And then, you know what I mean? Like, that could maybe confuse people as well a little bit.
In my experience, in my personal experience, though, I do have, you know, personal people that have transitioned, and when they come, I mean, it's just the same a lot of the time as when they are in life. So they're definitely more exuberant, more happy. They're not in pain. They're not struggling with stress or anxiety or anything like that. But that personality is kind of the same. I actually, my best friend passed, and that was the first person that I spoke with, like, you know, like consciously made the effort and reached out and got information. And it was a while before I realized that she was answering me. But I had like physical confirmation of it. But the physical confirmation, so when in life we joke about like when we passed away, we would be friends forever, and when we passed away, we would haunt people together.
Oh.
And so after she passed, I had a very unkind person staying in my home for a while, and I was really stressed, and I basically called out and I was like, look, you said that you would haunt people for me, and I need you to do it. I need this to happen. Like, if this is real, I need this to happen. And that person that was staying with me moved out.
Oh wow, there you go.
Like pulling on his shirt,
Oh my goodness.
and like things like that. We had like music that wasn't even on my phone just start playing in the middle of my living room.
Oh wow.
People over. Everybody was there, and I was like, I don't even know what song this is. I don't even know what this is.
Wow, there you go. Well, that's proof right there, isn't it? Wow.
That's sort of how she was proving to me that it was her. But
Yeah.
they use the same humor. They, if they're funny people, they use humor. If they're quiet people, they show you, they're quiet. I had one person who was a very personal being, wouldn't really show me their face, wouldn't tell me their name, but the way that it came through was enough to make that connection for the client. Where I was like, this person's, very, very subdued, very personal, doesn't really want to say who they are. And they were like, I know exactly who it is. So it really does come through very, very much.
Great. So it's good to know that like their personality, so even if it's comforting to know that, their personality still remains, yet all that fear, a lot of that fear-based programs, human programs attached to is dropped away. So it's comforting to know that if we're in contact with loved ones, there's always going to be love-based, like it's, even if someone was very, fearful in their human experience, they won't come to you in that fearful way, of course, unless it's linked to your belief systems. Of course, everything's linked to our belief systems, our soul contract. So maybe, so that's another thing as well, that, people are worried about like evil spirits and things like that. But, the beings of the light always say that there's no such thing as evil. It's all linked to our belief systems and duality consciousness. So if you have belief systems that are evil things, right, then they might come through to play that role to actually trigger you to go inwards, to remember more of who you are, and that it actually is an illusion, that it is only love. So that's another aspect as well.
And manifestations, so like if you believe that spirit world is going to manifest in a way that is scary, then that's your belief, and that is how it will manifest for you. If you have a lot of the time, you will just have an experience that shows you that you're safe. I think you were the one that had told me that you had a very terrifying.
Oh yes.
And that was a lesson for you.
It was like, I'll go into a little bit here, but so basically this was, I don't know, it was a good maybe 15 years ago or more, and this is before I knew I could channel and everything like that, but I always could feel angels. I could always feel the love, so I always knew I was protected. So I understand that leading up to that event, I knew that I was always going to be looked after. So I had, some people have faith, but when you're in a state of crisis, I guess, or fear, sometimes you may not believe it. But because I saw it with my own eyes, I felt it with my own eyes, this love presence, I know that it's there. So I had this experience, and I think I went to like a really big like spiritual temple. So I think that instigated my next stage of awakening. And I don't know if you or everyone else watching this or listening to this have a similar experience, but the night before I had this voice saying you're ready for the next stage, and I didn't know at the time, but it was the next stage of my awakening, because we go through obviously different stages throughout our life. And all this weird stuff was happening. I couldn't sleep. I remember putting my arm up, and this kind of light energy was going into my arm, and all this. It was it was a bit unusual. And it was interesting. And then I thought the next morning on the wall, like all these kind of, I don't know, it looked like it was like a weird language or something. It was very unusual. I'm like, what is that? You know, what's going on? And then I saw it change and morph, and I was like, okay, something's trying to communicate with me. And then I was, okay, so if you're trying to communicate with me, like, and I put my hand there, can you please do it in English? Like, so I can understand or whatever. And I wrote, and I saw, it is he, it is he, it is he. I'm like, who is it is he? And then I saw these like kind of images on the walls, and it's, for that time, nothing ever happened to me like this way before. So kind of was a bit like, what is going on, you know? And I didn't feel, at that point, I didn't really feel any good or bad energy. It was just like neutral at that stage, because I was like more in shock, I guess, what's going on.
Right.
It morphed to like a panda with a staff, and then it morphed to like, you know, like a witch, and then morphed to all these kind of symbolisms. I'm like, what is like all like I don't know, like it was weird, like a panda. I was just like, odd, like a panda and a staff. Like, okay, like it was just weird. It was like this weird imagery. Then looked like kind of like a gremlin or something. I'm like, oh, okay, what's this? And then I kind of, I don't know. And then I kind of, I don't know. I had like a realization that it was, of course, at the time I know there was a high risk, but at the time I did believe in evil, you know, at that time.
Right.
So I was like, and then it wrote like, it is here. And I just felt this like, and I felt like all this fear coming over me. And I felt like I was like, I guess possessed or something, you know, and it was like, I don't know. And then I started seeing, it is he with all over the walls. It is he, it is Satan burning in hell. I'm like, what? And I'm like, I'm not a religion person. Like, okay, I went to maybe church when I was younger, but I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I have no attachment. I'm like, that's weird. And then it would look like it was like dripping in blood, like all over the walls. Like, what the hell? And then I felt like this, and I don't know. I can't. At the time, it felt like I was not me, and I was like screaming top of my lungs. But and then someone at the time, and then I felt like I was screaming, right? And I was on the other end, all of a sudden I was just like, something kind of yanked me out. Like I felt like I just came out of it. I was like, oh, I'm back to who I am. And then the person on the other side, I was like, are you there? I'm like, yeah. And I wasn't screaming at all. It's just like, I perceived it as a screaming, right? A fear. And I was like, whoa. And then all of a sudden I felt empowered. And I just felt like, it's like it activated my calling. This is my journey. I mean, not everyone will go through this or experience it like this intense, but this relates to my specific life purpose, right? And then I was like, whoa. And I started seeing all this weird stuff on the wall, like trying to distract me, like weird, like just, I won't go into the details, but just say it's weird imagery. And it was meant to trigger me, and to make me know that that they know about my family, they know about all these it was kind of intense at the time, but I don't know what happened. It was like, I don't know, I didn't feel scared at that time when I was kind of yanked out. I don't know, that's how I described it at the time. And I had all this energy. I'm like, yeah, like I was like, and even though I could feel the energy was dense and like that, it was like, because the images were kind of on the wall, and it looked like a, you know, that Duracell bunny, and it was like, ha, like I was like, what? Like it was very odd at the time, but I don't know, but I was like, yeah, you know, like, and
right.
I could feel energy, but I felt so empowered and felt so special. I'm like, look at me. I'm so like, must be very important that you are visiting me in this way. And actually, it actually made me feel more powerful, not scared. It was actually opposite. Right? So this is part of my soul lessons. And I was like, yeah, you know, I must be so, you know, important that you're coming here, and and I actually felt so strong. I was like, I don't know. And I felt safe. I didn't feel scared. I was like, it actually it triggered, but activated my power. You know, I didn't know it at the time. I was like, you know, for this event to happen to me, there's obviously a reason, you know?
Right. And then, part of like realizing like, I'm not going to be harmed, you know, like,
yeah, I know, but it was meant to trigger me. The purpose of it was to trigger me. And of course, back then I had belief systems that there was evil and good and all this kind of thing. And anyway, so that led me on a bit path, and I went through another stage of awakening, and I won't go into details, but there was lots of things along the way that awakened to who I am. And it made me realize that I have a powerful gift. And at the time I didn't realize it, but that was one scenario that allowed me to remember I must be so powerful for this event to happen to me. And it kind of helped my belief systems to match to my soul purpose. And it helped me to awaken to who I am, that I'm meant to be, you know,
this person that provides message to provide teachings, to help people, to heal, to help healing.
Right.
And of course, I know now through like the stages of awakening that I've gone since then, that I know that the Satan is not being, it's a role. Okay, there's Lucifer and so forth, like that, different beings, but that Satan itself is a role. It's a role to show us to choose love or to choose fear. I mean, there's a lot of history about Satan and the Latin term and what it actually means and everything like that.
It really is wrapped all around duality and very, very much. I have had some kind of similar experiences, one or two in my youth before I even realized what was going on. So I think that I had some kind of like spooky experiences where I didn't really know what was happening. And I honestly didn't have any idea that I was the one that was activating the whole experience.
Yeah,
you know, like
that's right.
I was with friends and you know, I've since kind of gone back and been like, sorry guys, I didn't know. But for me, it was just kind of like realizing that like there isn't that duality, and that was kind of a long path for me, honestly, because there are like lower vibrational and higher vibrational, but it is all vibrational. Like it's not good or evil. It's just that duality is there for our learning, and you know, I had some stuff go on where I was like, all right, this is really creepy, but like I'm still here and I handled this. And you know, when I was speaking with the entity, I was like, this isn't scary at all. Like this is just a person, and they want my help. So you know, it wasn't necessarily a scary thing, but it was definitely a process to get there.
And like, I know, like from my experience, and this might happen to other people but in different ways, and if you experience like what you perceive as a fear-based energy, then they're just playing that role for you because you are attached to fear, you're attached to duality. It's part of your soul process. And usually, and other people have experienced like kind of similar scenarios, they have a very powerful life purpose, and that's why it happened to them, because it meant to shock them. It meant to trigger you to actually remember that you're powerful. Because imagine you're like, oh, I'm just nobody, blah, blah, blah. Then you got, it is Satan, burn in hell. I'm like, wow, I must be so powerful, like they want to stop me. Because at the time I was like, wow, I must be someone very special or someone important, because they want to stop me, you know what I mean?
Right.
And
if
like,
we have that a very powerful life purpose, if we need to be able to handle ourselves when we're in a situation like that, or when we're dealing with a client that is very locked into duality or fear, or in a situation where they're terrified about something, like we've got to be able to know how to stand up in that situation and not react emotionally to it. It's just like any lesson we would learn in our life.
Yeah. And, you know, like other events that happen in my life, whether it's like non-physical like that, or whether it's a real physical event, I'm very grateful for all my experiences, because it either activated or triggered me, right, to allow me to remember my life purpose, to remember my power. And this is for everyone. Everyone has an important life purpose. It doesn't have to be this grand, you know, level of you know, soul purpose. It could be just you sharing the light for others, you being an example of alignment, you working on your own frequency. So you can then, you know, when you are guided or inspired, you can, you know, provide those messages to others, or just even just sharing the love, because we're all connected. So if you're vibrating in a high vibe frequency, which means you are addressing, you know, your fears, your limiting beliefs, which is attached to duality consciousness, and look, we all have them, and it's all part of this purging process we're actually going through right now, where we have to address it. So, you know, it's about, you know, seeing everything as, may not be able to see everything as perfect, but it's happening for us, and it's about acceptance. And if you can accept what is happening, you let go of the resistance, and acceptance is a frequency of love. So if we start seeing things more from a love perspective, that means that we are actually increasing our frequency and our vibration, and that means we're more aligned to the guidance. We're more aligned to remembering in our conscious awareness our soul purpose and why we are here. So those of you watching or listening to this, I'm sure you've experienced in your life, you know, many different scenarios. You may have perceived them as bad or good, but they were all there for you. And even though you may not be able to comprehend it at, you know, during the time, even some years after, even people that have exited our life was also for a reason. So I think today's session kind of really sums up that, you know, we are never alone. We're always guided and supported. And, you know, we're always able to communicate with the non-physical. I know, like, for instance, me and Jenni here, we are playing specific roles to do this more in an overt way. So maybe our abilities are more intense than others. But, you know, everyone has this ability, right? It's about knowing that we are worthy of it. And we're all capable of it because we're all spiritual beings. So it's about living in the present moment, working on your frequency and your vibration. And once you can do that, you'll find these abilities will be known to you in a conscious awareness.
Right. And it's different for everybody. So some people hear, some people see, some people
That's right.
Will come to you the way that it comes to you.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, on that note, I think we'll end it here. Thank you for being on our podcast today, Jenni, and
thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Of course, it was a pleasure discussing this topic. And where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook. My name is Jenni Pierce Hughes. My page is Spirit Spectra Guidance, and you can contact me there by email on the messenger.
Wonderful. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for watching and listening to this. If you're not already, you know, subscribe to this podcast. If you want more information about me and my work with Beings of the Light, jump on beingsofthelight.com. You'll find links to, you know, my YouTube channel where you'll be able to, you know, view a lot of the channeling sessions. You know, I invite you to join Facebook community, so Beings of the Light with Kimberley community group. Facebook page and so forth. Let's, you know, during this time especially, I think it's really important for us to really come together. So, you know, I encourage you to check out, you know, Jenni's community also. So until next time, love and light to you all. Farewell.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Mystical Musings with Friends. To find more info about myself and how to reach out to me about this podcast, please see the episode details. Remember, you are never alone on your journey, for you are one with all that is.